restaurant was very fancy. Crystal lights hanging from the ceiling, white tablecloths, silver knives and forks that probably cost more than most people pay for rent in a month. This was the kind of place you had to book 3 months ahead. The kind of place where movie people came to eat, where business deals were made over very expensive wine, where money decided how every conversation went. This was Rouse in Las Vegas. November 1968. Bruce Lee was sitting at a corner table with his wife, Linda. They were celebrating. Bruce had just signed a consulting deal for a movie project. Good money, real money. For the first time in months, they could afford to eat somewhere like this. Linda was wearing a nice dress. Not flashy, just carefully chosen. Her blonde hair was pinned up. She looked happy, relaxed. That didn't happen very often. Most nights they were watching every dollar, checking what was left at the end of the week, worrying about the rent. Tonight was different. Tonight, neither of them was worried. Bruce was wearing a dark suit, simple and plain. He kept fixing his collar. He hated formal clothes. He preferred training clothes. But this place had rules, so he wore a suit. They were laughing. Bruce was telling her about a student who tried to learn the 1-inch punch in one afternoon, got frustrated, quit. Linda laughed, a real laugh, the kind that made little lines appear at the corners of her eyes. Bruce loved that laugh. He would do almost anything to keep hearing it. The waiter brought their food. Expensive steaks, lobster, wine that cost more than Bruce paid for his car each month. They ate slowly, no rushing, enjoying the food and something even rarer, the moment, the calm, the feeling of not worrying about money. The front door opened. 6 men walked in, all in suits. They moved with the kind of confidence people have when they think they matter more than everyone else in the room. The host greeted them. He was clearly nervous. He led them to a big table in the center, the best table in the restaurant. The man in front was about 55, gray hair, slicked back, expensive suit, diamond ring, gold watch. Everything about him said money, power, and something harder to explain. His name was Salvatore Vitale. Most people called him Sally. Officially, he was a businessman. Clubs, casinos, restaurants. Everyone knew the real story. Sally had ties to organized crime, and he had a lot of influence over how Las Vegas really worked. His men sat around him, 4 of them, big, alert men, the kind whose job was to use their bodies. One of them looked familiar to Bruce. He had seen him at a martial arts tournament, a former boxer, now working as hired muscle. That man noticed Bruce too. He leaned in and whispered something to Sally. He pointed. Sally slowly looked over. He studied Bruce. Then he looked at Linda. He kept looking at her longer than he should have. It was the kind of look a man gives when he thinks money gives him rights. Bruce saw it. His jaw tightened, but he didn't react. He didn't make a scene. He noticed it and let it go. Men like that were everywhere. Men who treated women like things to judge and collect. Bruce couldn't fight every one of them. He had to choose his battles. They finished their food. Bruce asked for the check. The bill was higher than they should spend on one night, but tonight was worth it. The waiter brought it. While Bruce was reaching for his wallet when Sally stood up. He walked across the room toward their table. His 4 men followed. They spread out slightly. Their body language wasn't friendly. This wasn't a casual visit. "Excuse me," Sally said. His voice was smooth, traveled, the voice of a man used to being listened to. "You're Bruce Lee, right? The kung fu guy?" Bruce looked up. He stayed in his chair. "Yes, that's me." "I thought so. I've seen you on TV, that show with the mask. Green Hornet." "That's right." Sally pulled out the chair across from Bruce and sat down. No invitation. His men stayed standing behind him. "I'm a big fan of that show," he said, but his voice didn't sound like a fan at all. There was something beneath it. Condescension or mockery, just barely held back. All those kicks, those hand chops, very entertaining. "Thank you." It must be something, pretending to fight on television, making it look real for the cameras. Bruce said nothing. And he watched. Under the table, Linda's hand found his and squeezed. A quiet signal. Stay calm. Not worth it. "I was just telling my boys," Sally continued, gesturing toward his men, "that TV fighting and real fighting are very different things. In our world, fighting is serious. It's about respect, territory, making sure people understand their place. It's not about looking good on camera." "I understand that." "Do you?" Sally leaned forward. "Because you're a small man, no offense intended. But you're what, 140 pounds, 150 soaking wet? In a real fight, against real men, I don't think the kung fu changes those numbers much." Bruce's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened slightly. "Is there a point to this conversation?" "Just being friendly. We're all having dinner. I came over to say hello." Sally's eyes moved back to Linda. They stayed there. "And who's this? Your wife?" "Yes. This is Linda." "Linda." Sally said the name slowly, as though tasting it. Beautiful name, beautiful woman, you're a lucky man, Bruce. I know I am. White woman too, that's unusual. You don't see many Chinese men with white women, usually it goes the other direction. White men, Asian women. Linda's grip on Bruce's hand tightened, her face flushed. Whatever this had started as, it had stopped being a conversation. This was harassment, but the options were limited. Sally owned this restaurant. He owned a significant portion of this city. The making a scene would be dangerous in ways that went beyond the immediate. We should probably be going, Linda said quietly. Go? You've barely been here. Sally's smile widened. Stay. Have dessert, a drink, on me, I insist. That's generous, but we really should. I insist. The warmth left his voice. It was a directive now, not an invitation. Behind him, his 4 men shifted position, subtle but clear. Leaving was not currently being offered as an option. Bruce ran through it quickly. 5 men, all larger, almost certainly armed. A restaurant full of people, most of whom either worked for Sally or would not intervene. Starting anything here would be suicide, but sitting here absorbing this was costing him something he couldn't fully account for. 1 drink, Bruce said. Then we leave. That's more like it. Sally snapped his fingers. A waiter materialized immediately, visibly frightened. Champagne, the best bottle. For my friends. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Now he returned within minutes with an expensive bottle, poured the glasses and left as quickly as he could. Sally raised his glass. A toast to Bruce Lee, the kung fu actor, and his beautiful wife, Linda. May they have a long and... He paused, a deliberate pause with a smirk behind it. Interesting life together. They drank. Bruce took a small sip. Linda barely touched her glass. Sally drained his and set it down hard on the table. You know, Bruce, I've been thinking. A man like you, small, an Asian, growing up in America, you probably had a difficult time of it, probably got pushed around, probably learned to fight just to get by. Something like that. And now you're on television, making money, got yourself a nice white wife, living the American dream. The tone shifted. It got uglier. But here's what I can't figure out. What's a woman like her doing with a man like you? No offense, you're small, you're foreign. You do staged fighting for a living. You're not exactly what most women are looking for. Bruce's hand curled into a fist under the table. Linda felt it. She squeezed harder, silently asking him not to. Maybe she's got yellow fever, one of Sally's men said. The others laughed. It was an unpleasant sound. Or maybe, Sally said, leaning closer, she just likes trying exotic things, you know what I mean? Maybe when she's ready for the real thing. White men, real men, men who can actually... Bruce stood up, fast. His chair scraped back, loud. The entire restaurant looked over. The room went quiet. Sally looked up at him. He seemed more amused than concerned. Easy, Kung Fu. I'm just talking, having a conversation. That's my wife you're talking about. Bruce's voice was low. It was controlled, but there was something in it that carried across the room. I know. Beautiful woman. I'm just saying. Don't. The word came out sharp and final. Don't say another word about her. Sally stood. But he was taller than Bruce, bigger, older. But something in Bruce's expression gave him pause. This man was not frightened, was not backing down, was standing there prepared to do something that by any rational calculation would not end well for him. Or what? Sally said. You'll fight me? In front of all these people? In my restaurant? If that's what it comes to. Sally's men moved in. Closer. A wall of bodies. Nobody put hands on anyone. But the message was physical. This could be resolved in ways that would not favor Bruce. Nobody embarrassed Sally. Not here. Not in his own city. Linda stepped between them. Please, we don't want any trouble. We're leaving right now, both of us. Smart woman, Sally said. She knows when to cut her losses. You should listen to her, Bruce, before this goes somewhere you can't come back from. It's already past that. Bruce moved Linda gently aside. Not roughly, when he put himself between her and Sally's men. You disrespected her. You insulted her. You said things about her in front of a room full of people. That doesn't get walked past. Doesn't it? Sally's smile returned. What exactly are you going to do? Fight 5 of us? In here? You'd be on the ground before you got one punch off. Maybe, but you'd be on the ground first. That part isn't in question. That stopped Sally. This was not a threat delivered from adrenaline. It had no heat behind it. But it was a statement of fact, spoken by someone who had already run the calculation and accepted what it would cost. You're serious. Sally was no longer smiling. You genuinely think you could... I don't think, I know. You have 5 men. You probably have weapons. That changes the outcome eventually. But before any of that is a factor, you're already down. Your men can deal with whatever comes next. You won't be there to see it." The restaurant was frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. The manager appeared at the edge of the situation, a small, anxious man trying to find a way in. "Gentlemen, please, if we could just stay out of it." Sally didn't look at him. The manager stepped back. He knew better than to insert himself between Sally and anything. "You have one option," Bruce said. "Apologize to my wife, properly, sincerely, then we leave and nothing else happens tonight." Sally's expression moved through several things. Anger, pride, something that might have been calculation, and something else, briefly, that looked like genuine reassessment. This man in front of him was not bluffing. He was not posturing. He was standing in a room with 5 armed men, in a restaurant full of people who worked for Sally, and he was offering an apology as the only exit. That kind of willingness to accept the worst outcome in exchange for one thing was difficult to manage. Now you could not threaten someone who had already decided the cost was acceptable. "I apologize," Sally said finally. The words came out stiff, reluctant. "To your wife, for my remarks. They were inappropriate." Bruce didn't move. "Look at her. Say it to her directly." Sally's jaw tightened. Nobody told him what to do, but he turned to Linda. "I apologize, Mrs. Lee. What I said was disrespectful. I'm sorry." Linda said nothing. She nodded once, accepting it. "We're leaving," Bruce said. But he put cash on the table, enough to cover everything, took Linda's hand, and walked toward the exit at a steady pace. No rush, not running, just walking with intention. Sally's men looked at him, waiting for the signal to do something. Stop them, make something happen. Sally shook his head. "Let them go." They walked out into the Las Vegas night. The air was cool. The strip was lit in every direction, neon in every color. Bruce walked Linda to their car. Old car. Cheap. Nothing like the vehicles in the parking lot around them. But it was theirs. They got in. Neither spoke for a moment, both breathing harder than they should have been, coming down from it. "You almost got us killed," Linda said finally. "I know. Over words, over insults. Not just words. He disrespected you. In front of me, in front of that entire room. That can't be absorbed and left alone. Yes, it can. Words don't matter. You matter. Us being alive matters." Bruce's hands were tight on the steering wheel, knuckles white. "I couldn't sit there and let him talk about you that way, like you're an object, like you're some kind of curiosity. You're my wife. You deserved someone to stand up." Linda put her hand against his face. "I know, and I love you for it. But Bruce, that man is genuinely dangerous. He could have had you killed. He could have had both of us killed. I wasn't going to let him touch you. You can't fight 5 men, not without real consequences, not without one of them getting a weapon into it. Maybe not, but he would have gone down first. In that moment, that was the only thing that mattered." They sat for a while without speaking, the fear and the adrenaline working their way out of both of them. Bruce started the car and drove them out of the city, away from the lights, away from Sally's territory, away from what had almost happened. They drove for an hour without much conversation, just putting distance between themselves and the restaurant. Eventually, Bruce spoke. "I'm sorry. I should have gotten you out of there before it escalated. Should have recognized what was happening sooner and moved you to safety instead of letting it get to that point. You stood up for me. That's not making it worse. I put you in danger doing it. Men like that put women in danger every day. Just by being who they are, by saying what they want and expecting no one to say anything back. You saying something? That's not the problem. He's the problem." Bruce nodded, but he carried the weight of it. He should have been more calculated, should have read the room earlier, should have had them out the door before Sally ever crossed to their table. They arrived home late. Their apartment was small and inexpensive and nothing like the restaurant. But it was safe, and it was theirs. They locked up, checked the windows, both of them alert in a way that didn't fully go away. What if Sally decided the embarrassment was worth a response? What if standing up for Linda ended up costing them something much larger? Bruce didn't sleep. He stayed up through the night, watching, listening, prepared for something that didn't come. His mind kept returning to the scene, the words, the faces of the men standing behind Sally, the moment he stood up and the chair scraped back on the tile. The moment that could have ended very differently, but also the moment he refused to let his wife be spoken about that way. The moment he made clear that being smaller did not mean being available for humiliation, that being Asian in America did not mean absorbing racism without response, that being outnumbered did not settle the question of whether you stood up. Morning came, nothing happened. No retaliation, no visitors, no calls, just an ordinary morning. Bruce made breakfast. Linda came out, but tired, having slept poorly. "We should leave," she said. "Go to Los Angeles, San Francisco, somewhere that isn't here." "You think that's running?" "I think that's being practical. That man is not going to forget what happened, how you made him apologize in his own restaurant, in front of his own people. Men like that don't absorb embarrassment and move past it." "You're right." Bruce sat with it. "I'll call James, see if we can stay with him for a while. Give things time to settle." They packed quickly. There wasn't much to manage. Clothes, books, training equipment. The apartment was cleared in under an hour. They loaded the car, left the building, left Las Vegas, possibly for the last time. The drive to Los Angeles took 5 hours. Bruce watched the rearview mirror consistently, looking for cars that stayed with them too long, looking for anything that suggested they were being followed. Men like Sally had reached that extended well beyond city limits. They arrived safely, checked into an inexpensive motel, paid cash, used names that weren't their own, waiting to find out whether the threat was real or whether they'd overestimated the situation. 3 days passed. Nothing. No calls, no one at the door, no indication that Sally had any interest in following through. On the 4th day, a contact named James called. "Bruce, you need to hear what's going around." "What is it?" "The story. What happened at the restaurant. Between you and Sally Vitale, people are talking about it. The martial arts community, the film industry, casino workers. It's spreading." "That's not good. If people are talking, Sally hears it." "He probably has. But here's the logic. If he retaliates now, after publicly backing down, he looks weak twice. Once for giving in, and again for being petty enough to respond later. He's in a difficult position. Striking back makes it worse for him, not better." Bruce thought about it. It was a game theory problem, pride against strategy. Every option in front of Sally was unfavorable. Respond and look small. Don't respond and let the story stand. Either way, he'd already absorbed the damage. "So what do I do?" "Nothing. Stay quiet for a while. Let it become old news. Eventually something else takes its place." Sally moves on. You become a story nobody's telling anymore. It didn't quite work out that way. The story spread. In some versions, a fight actually took place. In some, Bruce had broken someone's arm. In others, he had been permanently barred from the city. The factual account disappeared under layers of embellishment and retelling. But the people who had been present, restaurant staff, other diners, remembered what had actually happened. They told it as they had seen it. A small Chinese man had stood up to a mob boss, in the boss's own restaurant, in the boss's own city, had demanded an apology on behalf of his wife and received one. That version of the story held. Bruce never returned to Las Vegas while Sally Vitale was still alive. The risk was too real, the potential consequences too serious. Linda was relieved. She had no desire to return to that city or to find herself in anything resembling that situation again. But something had shifted after that night. And in Bruce's reputation, among martial artists, among Asian Americans, among anyone who had spent time being talked over or dismissed or insulted and told to accept it, had taken on a new dimension. He had become a reference point, evidence that standing up was possible, that protecting the people you loved, even against poor odds, was not a thing that only happened in films. Years later, after Bruce's death, after his legend had grown well beyond the boundaries of martial arts or film, a journalist attempted to verify the account. He tracked down Celebratory Vitale, retired by then, old, no longer connected to the organizations that had once given him his authority. "Did it happen?" the journalist asked. "The confrontation with Bruce Lee?" Sally was quiet for a long time before answering. "Yeah, it happened." "Did he actually make you apologize?" "He did." "Why?" "You had 5 men. He was alone. You had every advantage." "Because he was ready to die. You could see it. Not as a performance, actually ready. When someone has made that decision, when they've already accepted the worst outcome, they're not manageable in the usual ways. Better to say the words and walk away than to find out what happens with a man who has nothing left to calculate." "Do you regret backing down?" "No, I regret what I said about his wife. That was wrong. He was right to call it out. It took more than most men have." "I'll give him that." "Did you ever consider retaliating afterward?" "No. He embarrassed me because I earned it. Escalating would have been the worst outcome for everyone, including me." The journalist published the piece. It confirmed what people had been saying for years. It had actually happened. Bruce had stood up to Sally Vitale, had refused to let the insults aimed at Linda pass without consequence, had forced an apology at considerable personal risk. The account became part of Bruce's broader story, not the part about his skill or his philosophy or his films, the part about his character, about the choices he made when no one was staging anything, when there were no cameras, when the consequences were entirely real. Linda kept the dress she wore that night. It stayed in the back of her closet, rarely looked at, never thrown away. It reminded her of too many things at once, the fear, the relief, the pride, was the love, to be discarded without a thought. She spoke about the evening sometimes, to Brandon and Shannon, to students who asked what their father had been like as a person, not as a martial artist or a cultural figure. She always told it the same way, with pride and with honesty about how frightened she had been, and with the understanding that what Bruce had done was reckless and unnecessary by one measure, and entirely necessary by another. Your father, she told them, was many things. Disciplined, driven, exceptional at what he devoted himself to. But above all of it, he was protective. When someone disrespected me, he didn't stop to calculate the odds. He stood up. That was who he was. The restaurant where it happened still operates, under different ownership and a different name. Same building, same corner table where Bruce and Linda had been sitting when Sally walked over, where an ordinary celebratory dinner became something else. The current staff doesn't know the history, but occasionally, older customers come in. They look around the room. They find the corner table and point, quietly, to whoever they're with. They were there that night, or they know someone who was, or the story reached them through someone who had been told it by an eyewitness. Sally had wanted it forgotten. His people had wanted it buried. The restaurant had its own reasons to let it go unremarked. Everyone involved had an interest in silence. But that particular silence never held. What had happened there continued to travel, in whispers, in memories, in accounts passed from person to person across the years. The story of a small man who looked at 5 men and 1 city and did not run. What happened was simple and not simple at all. A mob boss insulted Bruce Lee's wife. Bruce Lee stood up. An apology was made. 2 people drove away into the night and eventually built a life, had children, and left something behind that lasted far longer than the incident itself. The willingness behind that night, the complete, unhedged readiness to accept the worst outcome in defense of someone he loved, was what Sally had seen and had been unable to manage. It was, as Sally himself acknowledged years later, more dangerous than any technique. You cannot intimidate a man who has already accepted the cost. You cannot threaten someone who has stopped calculating. Sally recognized what he was looking at and made the choice available to him. He apologized. He let them leave. He survived the encounter by choosing correctly. Bruce and Linda survived it too, drove away, built what they built, all of it. The films, the philosophy, the legacy, the children, continued from that parking lot in November 1968 when Bruce Lee made a choice about what he was and was not willing to accept. That choice defined something. Not about his fighting. About the person behind it, a husband, a protector, a man for whom his wife's dignity was not a negotiable item, regardless of the odds against him. There are no police reports from that night, no news coverage from the time, no official documentation of any kind. What survived was memory. The testimony of people who were present, stories that refused to stop being told because the people carrying them refused to let them go. The truth that love sometimes demands courage. That protection sometimes requires risk. That there are things worth standing for even when the numbers are wrong. Linda was worth that to Bruce, worth everything the moment called for, worth the danger of saying not one more word in a room full of men who could have made those words his last. That's what happened. That's what was meant to disappear and didn't, because some stories carry their own weight forward, regardless of who would prefer they be forgotten.